you are," quotes, is critical to his practice. He is drawn to artists who inspire to visually express the intangible state of consciousness and the full range of emotions. Think about that. And I can't think really of a better way to introduce him. And today, I'm really thrilled. He's going to talk about. I would now like to think of other worlds, Ivan Albright and UFO culture. So I'm thrilled he's here, and I think this is really a time for this talk.
Thank you, Lisa, and thank you, Aaron and Heritage, and everybody for staying to the tail end of this. The first time in 20 years I've worked on Ivan Albright. They were warned in their training about the problem of dissonance. They were warned about what would happen with repeated exposure to this seamless earth. You will see, they were told, its fullness, its absence of borders except those between land and sea. You'll see no countries, just a rolling indivisible globe which knows no possibility of separation, let alone war. And you'll feel yourself pulled in two directions at once: exhilaration, anxiety, rapture, depression, tenderness, anger, hope, despair. Because, of course, you know that war abounds and that borders are something that people will kill and die for. While up here, there might be the small and distant rucking of land that tells of a mountain range, and there might be a vein that suggests a great river, but that's where it ends. There's no wall or barrier, no tribes, no war, no corruption or particular cause for fear. Before long, in all of them, a desire takes hold. It's a desire, no, the need, fueled by fervor, to protect this huge yet tiny earth, this thing of such miraculous and bizarre loveliness, this thing that is, given the poor choice of alternatives, so unmistakably home, this unbounded place, a suspended jewel, so shockingly bright. Can humans not find peace with one another? With the earth? It's not a fond wish, but a fretful demand. Can we not stop tyrannizing and destroying and ransacking and squandering this one thing on which our lives depend? Samantha Harvey, Orbital. Looking out the window of a plane in Vermont, preparing to fly to Miami, Ivan Albright saw this. It was August 1977. As people continued to board the flight, he looked out and translated what he saw onto the paper and sketching material he carried everywhere he traveled. Black swirls, spirals, and ovoid spots, smudges and lines swarm about his vision. Along the upper right and bottom, staccato strokes and percussive curls done rapidly and with force dance about as though marking the positions of birds. A gray to black haze swells outward, yet there are darker horizontal lines at the center as though marking the land's transition to sky. Faint yellows, spots of blue, and stains of red penetrate the fog like signals from afar. Vague traces of green mountains or a blue sky strain to come through. As the eyes adjust, it feels as though there is another world beyond the scrim at the edge of vision. When Albright made this drawing, he had been diagnosed legally blind. On June 10th of that year, after completing his painting, The Vermonter, If Life Were Life, There Would Be No Death, he wrote that he had 10% vision in his right eye and 24% in his left. A month and a half later, his sight had degraded further, and he was heading to Miami's Bascom Palmer Eye Institute at the University of Florida for the first of 2 corneal transplants. Dr. Norman Jaffe, an internationally renowned eye surgeon, did the operations. On the day before his first procedure, Albright drew his hospital room. He stood or sat in a chair, looking back at his bed and the windows beyond. An omnipresent visual buzz of swirling black and gray lines coil and bunch, representing the interference he experienced, the space between things made present, a tangible void. The procedure was successful, and a year later, he returned for his second one. After each operation, he painted images of fish, the first one triumphant, heralding a sense of renewal. He titled it Sea of Galilee, evoking a place of the miraculous. The second one, jittery and impatient, as if he couldn't wait for the healing to be done so that he could get to work. Wide open eyes call out to the artist, haunted and holding on to their last lingering sights. On completion of the corneal transplants at age 81, Albright felt reborn. Quote, "I couldn't see my hand in front of me," he told art critic Alan Artner. "It was like a room was closing in. Trees became like a blanket. Irises 5 feet away looked woven without any separation. Certain colors disappeared, and I could only see the light." The experience fascinated Albright, who had a reputation for depicting bodies and objects with vision that seemed microscopic. Quote, "It didn't frighten me a bit. I thought, my God, I have had a life, and such things happen. Aging is just as beautiful as the other part. After all, God made them both. Fruit, when young, starts out yellow, only to go through the spectrum until it reaches purple. What can you do?" An oil painting he made a few weeks before his first operation shows the degree to which his once sharp eyes reflected back flowers as softened spumes of color or slow, quiet fireworks. He described his predicament on the verso. Immediately after his bandages came off, Albright eagerly conveyed what his eyes perceived. A watercolor he made while still in Miami is soaked with pale colors and flashes of white, as though light was refracting oddly in his adjusting eyes. Albright credited Dr. Jaffe with giving him a second chance, inscribing this lithograph to him with deepest gratitude for a miracle. Albright's healed vision put him in a reflective state. He had also recently, in 1977, at the age of 80, donated all of his major work, including oils, sculpture, and works on paper, to the Art Institute of Chicago, which he considered his alma mater. And this is a context sheet of the reception for that. Looking afterward, and looking afterward at reproductions of his earlier renowned paintings, such as That Which I Should Have Done I Did Not Do, The Door, which is on the left there, and Poor Room, There Is No Time, No End, No Today, No Yesterday, No Tomorrow, Only the Forever and Forever and Forever Without End, otherwise known as The Window, products that of decades of work, which he denounced at this time after his eye operations. Looking at these reproductions, he denounced them as cheap and artificial and inferior works that he vowed to exceed in accuracy and feeling. Improved eyesight coincided with the need to look ahead to make a new body of work reflecting his personal transformation. Albright's experience of nearly losing his sight led him to explore his relationship to the universe. It was his nature to think cosmically as a lifelong seeker who investigated numerous philosophies and religions to understand the relationship between body and soul. His writing, largely made in private notebooks, shows a developing philosophy that is relational, positing that human beings are interdependent, inseparable from, and share substance with all parts of the universe. The first major work that he did as he regained his sight was an expression of this worldview. Still Life with Potatoes in Motion, done between 1978 and 80, is a modest oil painting on panel, 16 by 20 inches, but it occupied a great deal of Albright's time and headspace. In it, onions, garlic, potatoes, ceramic saucers, a glove, lace, hairpins, and a bracelet rise up from a wooden surface against a deep blue backdrop suggesting the night sky. It was composed, according to the artist, by placing the potatoes, onions, and garlic on turntables near mirrors that allowed him to view them from multiple positions and combine their composite views. Albright claimed to have incorporated 310 different positions in this painting to depict a swirling array, a scene of perpetual motion relating to the expansion of the universe, whirling galaxies, and their solar systems. This little-known painting has been exhibited only once, in 1997 in his retrospective in Chicago, which is where you see it there, and is the only major work still with the Albright family. It demands to be understood as a critical cumulative work in which he compressed lifelong concerns. It also led to profound self examination. Afterward, Albright began the extraordinary suite of 24 self portraits that occupied him until his death. Whoops, that's not supposed to be there. There we go. Still Life with Potatoes in Motion is critical to understanding Albright's spirituality as he faced his final years. The painting became a means to explore his position relative to other elements of the universe. During this time, he wrote frequently that the self elided with plants, animals, other people, rocks, light, time, and the stars. His language, often adjacent to spiritualism and a spiritualist framework in the past, incorporated now allusions to astral projection, time wormholes, and other aspects on the far edge of science and physics. His working title for the painting references flying saucers and suggests that he had been reading about generational spacecrafts, light speed, and looking at photographs of deep space. The painting became Albright's meditation about the cosmos and the consciousness expanding possibilities of interplanetary travel. As he planned the composition, he wrote, "Everything I have worked on or thought about has almost been exclusively about this world. I would now like to think about other worlds and places. Man has kept himself confined to this earth too much. I want to pretend at least that I am free to visit any planet, any sun or star in the universe. I want to try to find out, if possible, what they are like, what grows there, or whether they are wasteland. I want to know what their shadows are like, what their forms objects assume, if inhabited, to communicate with their travelers, to find out as much about this universe firsthand if possible, to travel to all infinite places. I must do this, whether only in dream or in actuality, I do not yet know." This relational credo, as he called it, developed at a time in which our expanding interplanetary identity was constantly in the news. Major astronomical events captivated researchers and amateur skywatchers throughout the 1970s. The years leading up to the 1969 moon landing were emphasized in popular culture for their drama and heroism, resulting in a spectacular triumph. NASA continued to innovate and push boundaries, achieving goals that defied expectations and allowed humanity to see more of our cosmic neighborhood. Between 1971 and 72, there were 4 moon landings with people in the Apollo program. The probe Pioneer 11 launched in 1973 and by 1974 sent back flyby images of Jupiter, like this, with close images of Saturn following in 1979. Viking 2 launched in 1975 to land on Mars and study its surface. Pioneer 13 sent probes to the surface of Venus in 1978. NASA's first space station, the ill-fated Skylab, launched in 1973, and astronauts worked in it for about 24 weeks. And in 1977, NASA launched Voyager 1 and 2, expanding humanity's reach beyond our solar system and including a golden record, this here, on board, optimistically aspiring to contact with off-Earth beings. Also in this period, I think I have the wrong PowerPoint, folks. I don't think this is the new one, unfortunately. It is the new one? Oh, and there's a whole bunch of slides that are missing, though. I don't think this is the new one. Sorry, folks. I should have brought a drum because I'm a drummer. I could have entertained you during this. I have a flash drive with it on it if you want to switch it out, unless you can find the updated one. Yeah, it's not the same. Let me. Okay, it's very important. Afterwards, if you've ever had a UFO experience, please come tell me. Thank you for switching that out. Okay. No. Oh, wait a minute. Well, okay. Does anybody remember Skylab? It crashed. Thankfully, it crashed after they were done using it. And I lived in Chicago, and there's this shock jock named Steve Dahl who was on The Loop, which is like an FM album-oriented radio station, and he's responsible for Disco Demolition, among other things, but he also made parody songs. I remember he made a song called Skylab that was based on the Rolling Stones song Shudder. So anyway, it's in my head. Very, very unfortunate. Also, since we're talking about Chicago, I hear that the Pope is a White Sox fan. So now we know God is a White Sox fan. And if she's a White Sox fan, she's got a lot to answer for. Does anybody know any jokes? Oh, okay. I don't know, Bo. You might need to come up. You might wind up like the Ernie Barnes comedian with the toilet paper thrown at you. You have a Last Supper joke? It's a good one. Well, okay, so the thing that I never met him, but the thing that everybody sort of thinks about Albright is that he painted these paintings that look grim to people when they first see them and scary and dark and macabre. But he was, by all descriptions, puckish and had a great sense of humor. And Earl Ludgate, the collector in Chicago, once joked with somebody who was coming to town to meet him. He described him like Lurch in the Addams Family, like for this person who's coming in, then this little guy with bushy eyebrows that's rapidly sort of telling silly jokes shows up. Okay, thank you. Also in this period, NASA began to support SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, which is a descendant of astrophysicist Frank Drake's Ozma project. An artist and UFO researcher, Bud Hopkins, published an alien abduction account conveyed to him by an experiencer in the Village Voice in 1976, eventually leading to his best-selling book about the phenomenon Missing Time. And Steven Spielberg's Close Encounter of the Third Kind, released in December 1977, grossed $24.6 million in its first 2 weeks. It is clear from contemporary writing that Albright paid attention to these developments. He wrote critically of the terrestrial thinking that led space program personnel to overlook the micro and macrocosmic relationship humanity has to the universe. Earthlings should incorporate another framework, shift their positionality and consciousness. Albright felt to be commensurate with the unique experience of space, they should be doing this. Humanity must reconsider its inquiry and goals in terms of the miraculous, the not Earth, the otherworldly, the changed nature of the self faced with the implications of intergalactic knowledge. He wrote, "We are not living in one time, but in 100 billion times all at the same instant. We are not moving in one direction, but in thousands of directions at the same instant. We are not one person, but millions of persons at the same instant. We are not thinking as one person, but as millions of persons. We are as eternal as the waves of the ocean. We are estimating and examining the universe with eyes. They are no judge of size. Our eyes are just made to work for a common earthling. They are not good for examining the immensity of the universe or the minuteness of an atom. Without motion, there would be no action, no life. The fact that the universe has motion must infer that it has life in itself. This quote is as much about Albright's phenomenological challenges in his studio as it is about humanity's Earth centric limitations of perspective about the solar system. Where are we in relation to the rest of the Milky Way? Are we the only planet in a habitable zone where life has emerged to develop intelligence and culture? What does it mean to leave Earth's orbit? And what do we gain by seeing the world from farther reaches in the solar system? What do we see in Albright's painting? We seem to be floating above and amidst the rising, swirling potatoes, saucers, and other elements. A volatile array, or objects with fixed trajectories? Are they and we in orbit around a planet, or is that a terrestrial thinking again? Are we, as he suggested above, divided and distributed across multiple space times, the depicted potatoes a slipped view into simultaneous adjacent dimensions? Still life with potatoes in motion works through allusion, a relationship of macro to microcosmic organic materials that grow in and are of the Earth, enact the sensation of galactic movement, the velocity of comets, of mass asteroids. As he painted this system of tubers and allium, he imagined them as a slice of the universe reconstituted in his Vermont studio, a spectacular conjuring of a deep field, where, quote, the haze, the glow of all objects, the dust, the dirt, the potatoes, the porcelain butter saucers are all moving together as a whirling unit, like a galaxy across my vision, bigger and smaller. The same objects grow dazzling and subdued, grows the light around them. Paint the dancing sunbeams, in this case, the shadow beams. All is one unit, all is one. The bit of the universe is repeating itself and moving in a circle. The universe within your studio walls. Study it, penetrate it, painting it as a ball of motion. Everything is included in it. Its motion includes time, also life and death. In its movement, it's on its way to eternity. At the bottom right, their scale seems tiny, or are they distant, rapidly circling a gravitational point, while across to their left, a slightly larger group levitates and spins on a vertical axis. At the center, two larger potatoes, one wrinkled and desiccated, another smooth and full, fly in opposite directions. Violet auras glow around many of the potatoes, setting off their amber and umber colors with vibratory propulsion. A sketch in one of Albright's notebooks gives a sense of how he planned the simultaneous arcs of motion above the framework that he was painting them on. Albright had alluded to the cosmos before in the background of The Vermonter, which he made between 1966 and 77, a painting that is a meditation on the intangible life force that animates flesh and its consciousness. Swirling around the sitter are colorful points of light and halos that might represent the soul, energy leaking out to rejoin the universe. And the connection between these animated balls of light and the suggestion of galaxies surrounding the body emphasize our composition as stardust. In his arrangement of animated potatoes, he was at once more direct and yet elusive, approximating the potential violence and wondrous beauty of space with graspable materials made mysterious. It is a disorienting composition, one that challenges the body to find a place in it, a means to integrate. It implies that the viewer is at once apart from the motion and yet caught up in it, inevitably incorporated. Why did this subject so captivate Albright at this moment? In the decade before his eyesight deteriorated and he started Still Life with Potatoes in Motion, Albright traveled constantly. Between 1967 and 78, he visited Afghanistan, Cyprus, Czechoslovakia, Ecuador, Egypt, the Fiji Islands, Germany, Greece, Holland, Hong Kong, India, Indonesia, Iran, Israel, Italy, Japan, Kenya, Malaysia, Mexico, Morocco, Nepal, Peru, Portugal, Singapore, the Soviet Union, Sweden, Thailand, Tunisia, Turkey, Venezuela, plus places in the United States. And this is a partial list. These trips showed him our world as a connected ecosystem, an interdependent stream of communities. He recognized the earth as a living thing, suspended and radiant, despite its odds in the void. His preoccupation shifted from a meditation on the individual life force to our communal connection to the broader universe. Albright met people in all these places, wanted to hear the languages and to see neighborhoods, and drew in all of them. These travel drawings and watercolors show a fascination with the skies above these landscapes and the effect of the ecosystem, a sense of unity, even as his eyesight was failing. Albright's thinking is documented throughout his 1970s notebooks, and in 1982, he consolidated much of that writing into a statement he published in a brochure that accompanied an exhibition that year of his travel drawings at the Carnegie Institute of Art. It reads, "Man is not an individual. Nothing is individual in the world. Man as an individual does not exist. Man is not a separate identity. Man cannot exist as an individual. Man is but part of everything. Man is a fragment of the whole. Everything in existence makes the whole. Man is not the whole. The whole is one, and the one includes all. Everything around man is part of man. He cannot separate himself from his surroundings. Everything man views becomes part of him. In a room, the chair, the table, the door, the window become part of him, and man becomes part of them. All that man sees becomes part of man. There is no separation of parts in the universe. Everything is part of everything else. The whole is one. And there is only light and motion in this world, and they are life. And I am in you, and you are in me, and we are one, and the one is the whole." Albright's writings and contemporary imagery reveal a shift to thinking cosmically, working through a representation of celestial bodies and imagining the possibilities of traveling beyond Earth. This follows from his period of intense travel, looking down upon the curved Earth from a plane, experiencing new places throughout the globe, and coming to understanding the world as an ecosystem and place of connected people. Can Albright's coincidence at the end of that period of travel, of legal blindness, be understood as contributing to this view? Can disrupted vision become directed vision, vision that lost focus but then had to take in a wide panorama in order to take in as much light as possible and help him understand where he was in space? It must have been disorienting and confusing, even as he said it was interesting. What does it do to the self? I am struck by the correspondences to something called the overview effect in Albright's writings. Experienced by astronauts and spacecrafts orbiting the Earth, and especially during spacewalks, the phenomenon lies in complementary, contradictory feelings resulting from seeing the infinite while surrounded by it and hovering above the Earth and seeing it as one never has, one whole, graspable, tangible, compact living sphere. Edgar Mitchell, shown here, the sixth person to walk on the moon during Apollo 14, described it in 1974. You develop an instant global consciousness, a people orientation, an intense dissatisfaction with the state of the world, and a compulsion to do something about it. From out there on the moon, international politics looks so petty. You want to grab a politician by the scruff of the neck and drag him 250,000 miles out and say, "Look at that, you son of a bitch." Mitchell's epiphany occurred during the flight back from the moon. He and Alan Shepard had gathered geological samples they hoped would reveal something of the moon's inner structure. As the command module hurtled toward Earth, Mitchell watched it pass by the window of the rotating capsule in 2-minute intervals. Observing space, Mitchell later recalled a sudden deep realization of oneness. Quote, "I realized that the molecules of my body and the molecules of the spacecraft had been manufactured in an ancient generation of stars. It was a subjective, visceral experience accompanied by ecstasy." Other astronauts, particularly those who did longer spacewalks, like Ed White, shown here in 1965 as part of Gemini 4, felt similarly and did not want to come back into the vehicle, nearly overheating before being commanded for his own safety to return. Or Bruce McCandless, floating in space without a tether as part of the 1984 Challenger mission. What did he feel? How did he manage the sensations? Some took their own pictures of themselves before Earth, asserting they were there. This really happened. A human being was out here in orbit, out of a vehicle. Buzz Aldrin here in 1966 as part of Gemini 12, for instance, or Clayton Anderson in 2007 outside the International Space Station, photographing the Earth reflected in his visor. How does one stay grounded when there is no ground, no gravity, no net? Astronaut Russell Schweickart had his transformative experience as part of Apollo 9 in 1969 when his camera malfunctioned during a spacewalk and he had unexpected time to contemplate Earth. He started to consider the implications of humanity looking back at itself from the perspective of space. Schweikart looked down at Earth and connected with familiar places during his spacewalk. Then he began to connect with continents and countries he had never been to. He started to look forward to seeing them as they came around again and again. He recalled, quote, "You anticipated, and there it is. When you go around the earth in an hour and a half, you begin to recognize that your identity is with that whole thing. You look down there and you can't imagine how many borders and boundaries you cross again and again and again, and you don't even see them. Hundreds of people killing each other over some imaginary line that you're not even aware of, that you can't see. And from where you see it, the thing is a whole and it's beautiful. And you wish you could take one in each hand and say, look, from each side, look at this from this perspective, look at that. What's important?" He was also struck by how fragile the Earth seemed in relation to the other planets in the immense void spanning stars light years away. "Such a precious little spot in that universe," he said, "that you can block out with your thumb, and you realize that on that small spot, that little blue and white thing, is everything that means anything to you. All of history and music and poetry and art and war and death and birth and love, tears, joy, games, all of it on that little spot out there. You look down and you see all that surface of the globe that you've lived on, and all of this time, all these people down there, they're like you. They are you, and somehow you represent them. That's a humbling feeling. That says you have a responsibility. It's not for yourself. It tells you something about your relationship with this thing we call life. It's you, it's us, it's we. And it's not just my problem to integrate. It's not my challenge to integrate my joy, to integrate what's yours. It's everybody's." Albright's lifelong search for meaning in the body, an attempt to express that spirit, the soul, consciousness, culminated in his 80s. He needed to live that much in order to integrate his gathered perceptions about life. An intense period of travel, the threat of vision loss, and curiosity about cosmic experiences combined to produce a sensation in him similar to the overview effect. He felt it from Earth, felt it in his body, and tried to convey it in painting and words. It led him to consider other worlds beyond Earth, while also meditating on the Earth and its void, delicately balanced in a habitable zone that seems miraculous. Just before he turned his attention to himself as a subject, he made a little painting that compresses his ideas about the cosmos and our place in it. The Lonely Potato from 1981, shown here, is an expression of the ungraspable, intangible, unknowable universe. He wrote as he planned the little 6x9, quote, "The unknown dimension of another world, one we don't know and have never seen. I want to paint the marvelous feeling of this new exposure. I'm having the motion relatively slow so I can study the movement. Complete understanding moves the object, showing new dimensions and new beings." Look closely at the potato in the saucer in this painting. Stare at the top edge, and it appears present, corporeal. But Albright has managed to depict an object that is tangible, real, yet ethereal and of spirit, transparent and evasive, like the light emanating from a star that has perished in the time its spark has made it to the eye. Look downward slowly from that top edge, and the ellipsoid shape becomes an apparition. The saucer beneath visible, the space between outside top skin and the saucer surface exposed, open, empty, to be occupied by another body. The more one looks, the further away from fixed vision it becomes. It does not rest or behave like other representations of objects. It exists nowhere and in many places at once, rising up perpetually but never resolves. The lonely potato is a vision of earth, humble, cosmic, never fixed, fluid, and vulnerable. After this, Albright shifted his focus to his own face as if to capture the degree to which he was present and never changing, a self constantly moving on a perpetually spinning, orbiting planet in the arm of a swirling galaxy. Looking out leads us to look in. Our search for life in the universe misses the point that we are the only extraterrestrial travelers sending out interplanetary craft. We are alien species for these other worlds, and invaders to pristine worlds, otherworldly and threatening. Ultimately, we need to rediscover the depth and complexity of our own world, realizing that it is all we have, and we are all we have. Let us not be aliens to it, but embrace it. As we travel the solar system and look back from Mars, like Curiosity doing so here at the Earth, and from Saturn, as Cassini did, looking back at the Earth here, let us reflect on how miraculous it is that we live when so much that surrounds us is dormant, unwelcoming, devoid of life, and forces us home. Let us rediscover our humanity and interconnectedness without leaving the ground. Thank you. Thanks again for your patience. Any questions? Yes. No, Michael, what's his last name? No, but I'd like to know about him. Yeah, thanks. Excellent. Mr. Murphy. Yeah, did everybody hear that question? If you didn't, I'll repeat it. I don't think the microphone's on. So John, who worked at the Art Institute, did a 2018 show called Flesh that was representing Ivan Albright in the gallery in the Rice Building. As you mentioned, Albright did give all of his major work to the Art Institute, but it's very infrequently out. The same three paintings are out over and over again. And so he was asking, what do I think of Albright's evolution from those early late 20s and 1930s paintings about the body and flesh and the intangible, and then these later things? And I guess what I've come to really be thinking about is that it's more of a constant conversation that he's having with himself and his subject matter about he's constantly trying to paint the intangible in the most visceral and present way. So I think there's a number of artists in the 20th century who, instead of deciding that abstraction is the most appropriate way to paint the intangible, they use a very precise and almost excessive realism to do it. And in some ways, the image starts to the materiality starts to dissolve, and you see something kind of beyond that. It's uncanny. And Albright was constantly interested in, if we have this sense that there's consciousness, which we can't see, or this animating force inside of us that heals the body or seems to account for things that our science can't put its finger on yet, How do you paint that? What does that look like? How do you show that that's inside of a body? And he was trying to do that constantly, but that led him naturally to think about other ways that the intangible is present in material objects. And so I think that after that experience of working for 11 years on the Vermonter, which I showed you, that's a painting at the Hood Museum, um, that uh, he kind of started to leave that idea of looking just at the body. And I do really think that it was this, he made light of it because he often made light of things, but I think that experience of as an artist almost completely losing his vision and also being fascinated by how everything was one when he tried to look around and he could see light and kind of seeing these things led him to start sort of thinking about what's beyond the earth and the cosmos and likened it to the stars. There's a lot of stuff in his notebooks about that, but also in his archives we know that he's looking at science articles that are about black holes and all sorts of other things. He's keeping up with this kind of interest in space in the 1970s and fascinated by it. But he's always interested in the folly of human beings thinking that they're superior to anything else. And so when he's critiquing what he's referring to as terrestrial thinking, he's saying, just like if we're trying to talk about the soul, we have a certain kind of conventional set of language for that. But if you're talking about things that are paranormal or phenomenological in a spiritual way or about the spirit, you have to shift your thinking to incorporate different kinds of terminology and ways of thinking. Otherwise, you're not going to meet it and understand it. And I think he started to think that about people with their hubris going out in machines and going to the moon and thinking, well, maybe that's limited. There's other ways that maybe we can think. And he was fascinated by the idea of astral projection and stuff like that. Um, so I think he just expands what he's thinking about in terms of the intangible to start incorporating the cosmos in part because of what's going on with I think the space program and then also that personal crisis that happened. Mhm, mhm. With trying to paint the intangible, but using a realist method, Gregory Gillespie is a good example. Um, Jane Lund, George Tucker to some extent, people like that. But in Chicago, where he spent most of at least half of his career, a little bit more than that, um, being an artist, uh, being an artist and getting the kind of street cred that you would get in Chicago really meant just making yourself distinctive from everybody else and not sort of following trends or isms or things like that and really eking out a very individual path. And in Chicago early on, there was a really warm reception for surrealism, like in the late 20s, and great surrealist collections founded in Chicago. And I think that interest in translating dreams and experiences and states of being into tangible imagery was always there. And so part of it is a kind of culture of that kind of artistic sort of process and thinking in Chicago. Sun Ra was in Chicago. I don't know that there's any connection between Sun Ra and Ivan Albright, but there's also a real interest in UFOs in Chicago, particularly in the 1950s and 60s. The artist Messina Barton and artist Julia Tekla are painting UFO imagery. There are other people in the 50s and 60s that are doing that. And so there's a real inquiry and thirst for this information that is beyond what we can see and know here that's always sort of going on there. Mhm. Yeah, he didn't seem to be a joiner, but it's true that he definitely was reading about Buddhism. He was also reading about Taoism, Swedenborg, Blavatsky. Like, there's a whole panoply of things that he's interested in, particularly after the First World War when he comes back from serving in France and drawing wounds at a medical base. In the 20s, he is looking. He's looking for meaning in life and death, and he's searching for philosophies and religions that are going to deal exactly with that. And he's scribbling down information, but he was never really a devotee of anything in particular. Okay.